When I stepped onto my own land, I was met with the deafening roar of machinery and the sight of a demolition crew tearing my mansion apart. The HOA president stood nearby, smiling like she'd won something, clipboard in hand, and told me I'd abandoned the place. The air reeked of diesel. Metal scraped against wood. My century-old oak staircase, the one I'd spent weeks planning to restore, lay in splinters across the lawn. Just 6 months earlier, I'd bought the property at auction for $127,000. Thornhill Manor, a 1920s lakeside gem on Lake Matthias in upstate New York. 6 bedrooms, 2 acres, 200 feet of private shoreline. Sure, it was a wreck, but I'm Marcus Jennings. 20 years in the Navy Seabees. I've rebuilt bridges in combat zones. I could handle this. I'd left for a 3-month job in Alaska and came home to find my dream house being ripped apart. The woman with the clipboard? Darlene Van Camp, real estate agent, HOA president, and, as I'd come to learn, a professional thief in disguise. Would you have called the cops? Or done what I did? Stick around, because every good fight starts with a reason worth fighting for. I spent 2 decades in the Navy's construction battalion, building airstrips in deserts, bridges under fire, barracks in blistering heat. It was hard, honest work. But in my 18th year, a training accident sent shrapnel into my left leg. I've walked with a limp ever since. Retired medically at 45, living off a small disability check and a toolbox full of skills nobody seemed to need. So I took whatever jobs I could: carpentry, kitchen remodels, deck repairs. Enough to get by. My grandmother, Estelle, raised me in a cramped apartment in Syracuse. She cleaned houses for a living and never owned a thing. But she had this dream. She'd cut out pictures from magazines. Lake houses, wraparound porches, long docks stretching into blue water. She'd tape them inside her closet and whisper, "One day, baby. One day we'll have a place like that." She never got her lake house. She died when I was 23. Fast forward to 2 years ago, I was scrolling through property auctions when I saw it. Thornhill Manor. Foreclosure listing. Lakefront. Opening bid, $1,950. The pictures looked like a horror set, but beneath the rot I saw promise. Hand-carved oak stairs, a 1924 stone fireplace, solid craftsman bones. I was the only bidder. Closed at $127,000. Sold my truck, drained my savings, took a rehab loan, $147,000 total. My daughter, Zoe, laughed. "Dad, that's not a fixer-upper. That's a felony waiting to happen." But when I walked through Thornhill for the first time, sunlight broke through shattered shutters, catching the dust like gold. The air stank of mold, dead mice, and rot. Glass cracked under my boots. Yet, when I ran my hand along the oak newel post, smooth and cool, I could almost feel Estelle's hand there too. I had an 18-month plan. Foundation, roof, wiring, woodwork. All of it by hand. 3 days in, a white Lexus stopped at the end of my drive. Out stepped a woman, 60s, helmet hair, pastel sweater, and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Mr. Jennings?" she called, not waiting for an answer. Darlene Van Camp, chair of the Architectural Review Board for Lakeview Estates HOA. Thornhill violates 17 codes and 4 covenants. You have 30 days to submit renovation plans for approval. I frowned. "Ma'am, I'm not in an HOA. My deed says no covenants." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart. The plat map was amended in 2003. You bought into the HOA whether you knew it or not. Your title company missed it. Not my problem." She turned, clicked back to her car, careful not to step on the gravel, like poverty might be contagious. That night, I looked her up. Real estate agent, vice chair of the planning commission, widow of Judge Van Camp. She never let me forget it later. 3 rental properties, her own brokerage firm, and enough local clout to choke a man. 2 weeks later, I submitted 40 pages of detailed plans, architect drawings, engineer stamps, every box checked. Rejected in 72 hours. Materials not in keeping with neighborhood character. I appealed. The ARB hearing lasted 10 minutes in a stale room that reeked of burnt coffee and cheap floral air freshener. Darlene mispronounced my name 3 times. Mr. Jenkins. Her sidekick, Ron, a retired dentist, eyed my leg brace and asked, "You sure you can handle a project this big given your condition?" Darlene gave him that syrupy smile. "We just want what's best for the community. Maybe a smaller property would suit you better." I kept my voice steady. "I'll make the adjustments." As I left, Ron muttered, "Good luck with that." That's when I knew this wasn't about codes. She wanted me gone. By week 4, I'd hired a small structural crew to shore up the north wall before winter. On day 2, a county inspector pulled up, Jerry, 50-something, gut hanging over his belt, clipboard at the ready. "Stop work order," he said, slapping a red tag on my front door. "What's the problem?" I asked. "Foundation survey's off by 18 inches. You'll need an amended permit before resuming. 6 to 8 weeks processing." "Off by 18 inches? According to who?" He shrugged. "County records. New survey required." Then he left, boots crunching loud in the gravel. I called my survey company. "Our measurements are precise to the inch," they said. "We'll stake our license on it." So who told the county otherwise? Silence. Then, permit review committee flagged it. Vice chair's signature on the hold order. I didn't need to guess whose signature that was. My contractor, Lyle, called that night. "Good man. Marcus, I can't keep the crew idle 2 months. I've got bills, kids. I'm sorry, brother." I told him I understood. That night, I sat alone on the grand staircase, the only thing left intact, cold wind slipping through the half-framed walls. Outside, the lake lapped against the dock, once peaceful, now mocking. Zoe texted, "You okay, Dad?" I typed back, "Yeah, just tired." I didn't tell her I'd been staring at the wall for an hour, wondering if she was right. Maybe this house was a lost cause. Then I looked down at that oak post beneath my hand. Smooth. Cool. 100 years of hands before mine. Estelle's voice echoed in my head. "One day, baby." Not today, I thought. Not yet. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office, a dim basement that smelled of paper and mildew. I pulled every plat map, every zoning amendment, every HOA record since 1990. 3 nights. Gas station coffee. Eyes burning. And then I found it. The 2003 amendment Darlene kept referencing. The one supposedly binding Thornhill to the HOA. It had never been ratified by the county legislature. Just the town council. And I remembered something from an old Navy construction law class. Town councils can impose deed restrictions on existing properties without higher approval. That's selective enforcement. Illegal in New York. Darlene's name was on the petition, along with her late husband's, Ron's, and 2 other board cronies. All of them owned land adjacent to Thornhill. Property values jumped 30% after that amendment. They'd rigged the system to squeeze out original owners. I scanned every page, wrote a 6-page memo, and sent it at 11:47 p.m. to the entire town council, the state attorney general's HOA fraud hotline, and a local reporter named Beth Ramirez. Subject line, "Illegal covenant enforcement, Thornhill Manor." I'm no lawyer, but Fury and Google make a pretty solid legal team. By Thursday, the town council called an emergency session. Darlene? She was about to panic to be why Thursday. The town council had called an emergency session, which was their polite way of saying panic mode. Friday afternoon, Darlene's name flashed on my phone screen. I almost ignored it. "Marcus," she began, first name basis now, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "There's been a misunderstanding. Let's grab coffee, talk this out like neighbors." I stood inside Thornhill's bare frame, the tarp flapping over that unfinished wall. "I'll have my coffee at the next council meeting, Darlene." During public comment. Silence. Then came the faint click-click-click of her manicured nails against her phone. A tight inhale. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," I said. "Wouldn't be my first." Then I hung up. That night, I installed 4 security cameras, every corner covered, cloud backup active. If she wanted a war, I'd keep the receipts. The council meeting was 2 weeks away, plenty of time for her to stir up trouble. And she did. By week 7, I walked into the monthly HOA meeting ready to present my findings about the illegal plat map. I had printouts, a laptop with all the documents scanned, even wore a clean button-down instead of my usual work shirt. Wanted to look professional, harder to brush off. But the moment I entered the community center, I knew she'd beaten me to the punch. Every seat held a glossy flyer, full color, heavy paper, clearly a rush job that cost hundreds. Panic money. The header screamed in red. Safety concerns at Thornhill Manor. One resident's reckless renovation endangers us all. My pulse stayed steady, Navy training. You don't react until you've assessed the situation. Inside, though, I was boiling. The flyer accused me of everything under the sun. Said my property was attracting trespassers, that teenagers were drinking by the lake, that debris from my repairs was polluting the water. Even claimed I was doing unlicensed electrical work that could start a fire and threaten nearby homes. Every word was a lie, but printed on nice paper with bullet points and charts, it looked official. Darlene sat at the head table, pearls gleaming, hands folded neatly, that smug smile on her face, the look of someone who thinks she's holding the winning hand. 3 neighbors stood to testify, all ARB members or their relatives. First was Phyllis, Darlene's bridge partner, wrapped in floral perfume thick enough to choke a room. My property value has dropped $40,000 since that man moved in, she announced. My realtor confirmed it. She wouldn't even look at me. Next was Ron, the retired dentist. I've personally seen unsecured lumber, exposed wiring. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Then a man I didn't recognize, Ron's cousin, apparently, said, "My kids used to play by that lake. Now I don't let them near it. Who knows what's in that water?" Heads nodded around the room. People I'd never met agreeing that I was some reckless menace. One woman in the 3rd row caught my eye, then quickly looked away. Finally, Darlene rose, cleared her throat, and the room fell quiet. "Given these serious concerns," she said smoothly, "I'm proposing an emergency bylaw amendment. Any uninhabitable structure left vacant for 90 consecutive days may be declared a public nuisance. The HOA would then have authority to remedy the issue, including demolition, with costs billed to the property owner." She paused to let that sink in. "We're not targeting anyone," she added sweetly. "This is about protecting our community." Ron nodded. Phyllis nodded. Half the room nodded like bobbleheads. When the floor finally opened for public comment, I didn't yell, didn't pound the table. I just walked up front, plugged my phone into the projector I'd borrowed from the VFW that morning, and said evenly, "Before you vote, there's something you should see." Image 1, timestamp security footage for my cameras, 11:14 p.m., 3 nights earlier. There was Ron, unmistakable, dumping a bag of empty beer cans onto my lawn before driving off. His license plate shone clear as day. The room went still. Phyllis froze. Ron turned the color of chalk. Image 2, a certified water quality report from an independent lab dated last week. 0 pollutants found near Thornhill. Then a second report showing elevated bacteria levels near 346 Lakeshore Drive, one of Darlene's rental properties with a leaking septic tank. Testing had cost me $220. Worth every penny. Image 3, a printout from my attorney buddy Rick at the VA. He'd reviewed Darlene's proposed bylaw and nearly spit out his coffee laughing. The rule was retroactive, written specifically to target an existing owner. That's illegal in every functioning state court. And since I'd been paying taxes and insurance all along, the property was legally occupied. Her amendment was nothing but theater. I turned to face her. "Mrs. Van Camp," I said quietly, "I don't know if you're trying to steal my home or if you just can't stand the idea of someone like me, a guy with a limp and a VA check, owning a piece of this lake. Either way, I'm not leaving. And if that bylaw passes, I'll see you in court. Fraud and selective enforcement don't hold up too well there." Silence. Not a cough. Not a shuffle. Then Beth Ramirez, the newspaper editor, started clapping. Slow, deliberate. A few others joined in. Darlene's face went from pale to crimson in seconds. She grabbed her folder and stormed out without adjourning the meeting. Ron fumbled for the gavel. "Meeting, tabled pending legal review," he stammered. Outside, the air was cold and damp, smelling of wet leaves and gasoline from the mower shed. My hands trembled, adrenaline finally catching up. The next morning, a dead raccoon lay on my front porch. Rigid, eyes clouded. Someone's idea of intimidation. I stood there, coffee in hand, staring at it, wondering what kind of person thought a corpse was a power move. I called animal control. They had it gone in 20 minutes. Then I added another camera aimed straight at the porch. If Darlene wanted to play stupid games, I'd be ready for every round to BY Week 10. Darlene had switched strategies. Since the HOA attack had backfired spectacularly, she went back to what she did best, weaponizing her friends in local government. Monday morning, right at 8, a code enforcement officer showed up. Reflective vest, camera, clipboard. Took photos from every angle like he was documenting a crime scene. Then he handed me a citation. Overgrown vegetation creating fire hazard. The vegetation was a patch of native wildflowers I'd intentionally preserved. It was even certified as a state-recognized wildlife habitat. I had the paperwork framed. Didn't matter. Violation. $500 a day if not corrected within 10 days. Tuesday, a health inspector stopped by. Open foundation hazard, he said. The so-called hazard was a crawlspace vent, the exact kind required by building code for ventilation. Still got written up. Another $500 per day. Wednesday, the fire marshal arrived. Unsecured hazardous materials, he claimed, pointing at my paint cans, which were stored in a locked steel cabinet, properly labeled and sealed tight. I even showed him my Navy certification in hazardous materials handling. He shrugged and wrote me up anyway. $500 more. 3 citations in 3 days. 10 days to fix problems that didn't exist. Potential fines, 15 grand. That night, I sat in the camper I'd parked beside Thornhill. No plumbing, no heat, just me and a cheap space heater trying to fight the November cold. My knee throbbed with every shift of air. I spread the violations across the folding table, like losing cards, and started doing the math. $15,000 would wipe out everything I had left. That would mean stopping work, selling at a loss, proving Darlene right. I stared at those papers for an hour, wondering if Estelle would have told me to quit. Maybe the smart move was walking away. Then my phone rang. It was Lyle, my old contractor. Marcus, he said, his voice tight with anger. I heard what she's doing. It's garbage, man. Look, I can't do full-time, but weekends are yours. Free labor. You just buy materials. I was speechless. Lyle, you've got 4 kids. A mortgage. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. My kids need to see that sometimes you stand up to bullies, not just complain about them. My throat went tight. 20 years in the military. I'd known brothers in arms. Hadn't expected to find one here. Yeah, I said softly. Okay, thank you. 10 minutes later, my neighbor Elena called. 2 lots down, one of the few who hadn't joined Darlene's HOA cult. Marcus, she said, I saw who dumped that raccoon. Ron's brother-in-law. I've got his plate number. I'll sign an affidavit if you need it. Elena, she'll come after you next, I warned. She laughed, sharp and fearless. Honey, she's been trying to cite me for my mailbox color for 3 years. I'm used to it. Besides, my daughter's watching. I'm not teaching her to stay quiet. That made 2 people willing to stick their necks out. Then came the third call. Beth, the local reporter. I've been digging into Darlene's past, she said. Found 3 other HOA disputes, all settled out of court, sealed with NDAs. Can't print the details yet, but the pattern's clear. She's done this before. Can you publish it? I asked. Not yet, she said. But keep feeding me proof. I'll build the case. I hung up, sitting there in the dark, space heater humming, realizing something had shifted. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that changed everything. By week 11, Darlene made her next move. She filed a lien against Thornhill, claiming I owed 6 months of HOA dues. $200 per month, plus $800 in late fees, $2,000 total. The lien hit public record Friday afternoon. By Monday, my bank sent a letter. Title cloud detected. Resolve immediately or the loan may be called. That one hit like a gut punch. A lien kills your credit, scares lenders, and freezes every renovation. Darlene knew exactly what she was doing, trying to choke me out financially. I called Rick, my VA attorney buddy, and told him everything. He went silent, then let out a low whistle. "Marcus," he said, "filing a knowingly false lien in New York is a misdemeanor, and it opens her up to triple damages. She just committed a crime." In writing. "How fast can we move?" I asked. 48 hours, he said. "Watch this." That afternoon, he drafted a certified demand letter, official letterhead, legal tone sharp enough to cut glass. Withdraw the lien in 48 hours or face criminal referral and a $3,600 counterclaim. By Tuesday morning, Darlene's high-priced Albany attorney called Rick. They spoke for 11 minutes. By Wednesday, the lien was gone. No apology, no explanation, just vanished. Beth ran the story anyway. Page 3. Veteran battles, HOA overreach, Van Camp under scrutiny for development conflicts. In a town of 8,000, Page 3 might as well be front-page news. That night, I built a fire in the pit by the dock. Burned the withdrawal notice, just for the satisfaction of it. Perfectly legal. Completely worth it. The paper blackened, curled, and disappeared into smoke that smelled faintly of applewood. Above me, geese were heading south in a ragged line. Smart birds, leaving before winter broke them. But me? I wasn't built to run. I cracked open a beer, sat on the cold dock planks, and watched the embers fade. Darlene was panicking now. And panic people always make mistakes. I'd be ready for every one of them. That IT was week 13 when Beth called. I was up on Thornhill's roof, patching a leak, my hands numb from the cold. The phone buzzed in my pocket. "Marcus," she said, her voice urgent, "you need to see this. I'm on my way over." By then, the lake wind had turned sharp, the kind that cuts through your jacket and sinks straight to bone. I climbed down, peeled off my gloves, and waited. When Beth arrived, she looked fired up. Hair windblown, notebook clutched tight. "Darlene's in deeper than we thought," she said. "The Planning Commission records show she's been fast-tracking zoning approvals for her own properties, using her position to bump up her land values while blocking everyone else." I felt the corner of my mouth twitch, not quite a smile, but close. "You can prove it?" "Oh, I've got documents," she said, eyes glinting. "Emails. Meeting minutes. The kind of paper trail that makes lawyers salivate. Once this runs, she's finished." I stared out at the lake, still, gray, reflecting the bare trees like a mirror. After everything she'd thrown at me, the lies, the fines, the threats, it was finally turning. Thornhill still stood, half restored, but alive. The walls were patched. The roof sealed. The foundation solid again. My friends had shown up, Lyle every weekend, Elena with coffee and lunches, even Beth hauling boxes of shingles like she'd been born with a hammer in her hand. For months, Darlene had used every trick to break me. Legal, financial, psychological. But what she didn't understand was that men like me don't quit. I'd rebuilt bridges under mortar fire. You don't scare a builder with paperwork. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Later that night, I sat by the dock again, the same spot where it had all started. Beer in hand, boots soaking up the cold from the boards. Across the lake, faint porch lights glowed, steady and small. I thought of Estelle, of those magazine clippings taped inside her closet. "One day, baby. One day." I looked up at the stars and whispered, "We made it, Grandma. Maybe not finished yet, but we made it." Behind me, Thornhill stood silhouetted against the moonlight, battered but standing. My house. My fight. My proof that some things are worth bleeding for. And somewhere out there, Darlene Van Camp was finally realizing she'd picked the wrong man to push off his own land. 20 minutes later, she pulled up with a cardboard file box and the kind of caffeinated energy that screams either breakthrough or breakdown. We crammed into my camper, barely room for 2 humans in her evidence pile, and she started pulling documents like a magician with a very boring rabbit. I requested 5 years of planning commission votes. Took them 6 weeks to comply. But look, she'd made a spreadsheet. Darlene's votes on one side, development projects on the other. 7 controversial lakefront builds. All 7 approved by Darlene. All 7 were Van Camp and Associates clients. Average commission, 22 grand each. I whistled low. That's a pattern. That's a career. But wait, there's more. She pulled out a brittle photocopy. Property records, 2019. Thornhill Manor pre-foreclosure. Edward Collier, the original owner, was in a nursing home. His daughter, Claire, was trying to manage the sale from Oregon. Stapled to the back, a notice of interest filed by Darlene Van Camp. Offer $95,000. My stomach dropped. She tried to buy Thornhill. Lowball offer. Claire rejected it. 6 months later, it went to auction. Darlene probably thought she'd coast in, grab it for pennies, flip it to a developer for 300 grand. Beth's grin was sharp. Then you showed up and ruined her retirement plan. How'd you find the daughter? Reporters never reveal sources, but Claire kept emails. Read this. She handed me her phone. Email from April 2019. Darlene's business account to Claire Collier. Subject, final offer. 3 sentences. Miss Collier, I urge you to reconsider my offer of $95,000. If you refuse, I will ensure the property is condemned as uninhabitable. The town will seize it via eminent domain, and you will receive nothing. This is your last opportunity to walk away whole. I read it once, twice. My vision tunneled. She threatened to destroy someone's inheritance if they didn't sell to her. Extortion in writing, using her planning commission position as a weapon. Claire's been carrying this for 5 years, thinking nobody would believe her against a judge's widow. I handed the phone back. My voice came out flat. What happens now? Forwarded to the DA and Attorney General this morning. Rick has copies. This isn't HOA drama anymore, Marcus. This is felony abuse of office. Criminal extortion. She weaponized her public position for private profit. I leaned back against the camper's thin wall. The space heater rattled like it was trying to shake itself apart. Outside, the lake churned gray and angry. How many others, you think? More than we'll ever know. But that email is a smoking gun. Beth packed up her files. DA's opening an investigation. Albany News Station wants to run it tonight. 6 p.m. I watched on my phone. A young reporter outside Darlene's office knocking. She opened the door, saw the camera, slammed it hard enough to rattle the frame. Mrs. Van Camp, did you threaten eminent domain to force a property sale? Her voice through the door, shaking. No comment. Leave me alone. 18 seconds of footage. By midnight, 18,000 Facebook views. Comments exploded. A contractor said she'd blocked his permits until he hired her nephew. A retired teacher claimed Darlene threatened violations when she wouldn't list with Van Camp and Associates. The town was excavating decades of buried grudges. I sat on the dock that night, breath pluming white in the cold, and thought about Edward Collier, about his daughter getting that threatening email, about every person Darlene had crushed who didn't have cameras or lawyers or a newspaper editor in their corner. She'd built an empire on fear. Now the foundation was cracking. My phone buzzed. Text from Rick. DA wants to meet Thursday, 10 a.m. Bring everything. I texted back, everything? His reply, might need a truck. I smiled in the dark. Darlene had spent months trying to bury me. Time to return the favor. Thursday morning, VFW Hall, 9 a.m. I showed up with 2 file boxes, a laptop, and every receipt I'd saved since buying Thornhill. Rick was already there. My attorney buddy, 50-some, perpetually rumpled suit, sharp as a tack. Beth arrived with a thermos of coffee strong enough to dissolve spoons. Lyle brought blueprints. We spread everything across the bar like we were planning a bank heist, except legal and significantly less profitable. All right, Rick said, cracking his knuckles. Darlene's wounded, but not dead. DA's investigation takes months. We need 3 simultaneous attacks. He grabbed a cocktail napkin and drew 3 arrows pointing at a stick figure labeled DVM. 1. Legal offense. Civil suit for harassment, abuse of process, slander, 50 grand in damages. Even if we settle for 20, it bleeds her legal budget and keeps her on defense. 2. Public pressure. Beth, you're our war correspondent. Weekly updates. Every dirty move Darlene makes, we document and publish. Make her name poison in this town. Beth was already typing, calling it the Thornhill Chronicles. 3. Finish the house fast. Best revenge is proving she failed. Turn Thornhill from derelict eyesore into the crown jewel of the lake. Lyle tapped the blueprints. Foundation solid. Electrical next. My brother-in-law Troy, licensed electrician. Ex-Army. He'll work at cost. Then roof and siding before first snow. I stared at Rick's napkin masterpiece. 3 arrows. 1 crude stick figure enemy. It looked like a third grader's art project. It was beautiful. How do I explain this to normal people? I asked. Rick leaned back. Abusive process is easy. Imagine your neighbor keeps calling the cops on you for noise violations, but really he just hates your dog. The law says you can't weaponize the system for personal grudges. That's Darlene. Beth nodded. I'm quoting you word for word. Good. That's why they pay me in VFW coffee and gratitude. We worked through lunch, drafted the complaint, outlined Beth's editorial schedule, mapped renovation milestones. By 2 p.m., we had a war plan. By Saturday, we were swinging hammers. Troy showed up at 7 a.m. with 3 apprentices and enough electrical wire to power a small town. I worked beside them, pulling cable, drilling junction boxes, learning on the fly. Troy was patient, good teacher. You did construction in the Navy, CBs, mostly demolition and framing. Not much wiring. Same concept. Electricity flows like water. Just don't cross the streams or you'll blow something up. That I understand. We ripped out the original 1924 knob and tube wiring, cloth-wrapped brittle. Some pieces charred black from decades of overload. Troy held up a crispy strand for Zoe's camera. This is what we're saving this house from. 1 good lightning strike, and Thornhill would have burned to the foundation. That Instagram clip hit 40,000 views in 2 days. Comments rolled in. Real American craftsmanship. This is what backbone looks like. Darlene who? Then the community showed up. Elena organized a Thornhill barn raising, old school work party. Saturday morning, 30 volunteers appeared. Veterans from the VFW, Elena's church group, curious neighbors. Even Phyllis, yes, that Phyllis, Darlene's former bridge partner, carrying a homemade pumpkin pie. She set it on the porch railing, hands shaking. Wouldn't meet my eyes. The note tucked under the tin read, I was a coward when I should have been a neighbor. Thank you for showing me the difference. I found her later painting window trim. Phyllis, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. I'm 73 years old. I don't have time left to be on the wrong side. We painted siding, raked 6 months of leaf rot, planted 200 spring bulbs that would bloom long after this fight was over. Deke from the lumber mill rolled up with a truckload of reclaimed oak. Heard you need flooring. I reached for my wallet. He stopped me. Darlene extorted $2,000 out of my grandson for a deck permit 3 years ago. Called it expediting fees. This is on me. Call it delayed justice. By sunset, Thornhill glowed. Not finished, months left, but alive. Lights in the windows. Laughter bouncing off the water. Deke fired up a grill. Someone brought a cooler of beer. An impromptu party on the lawn. The smell of charcoal and cut grass mixing with the lake breeze. I stood on the porch watching 30 people who'd been strangers 6 months ago, now working like family, and felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not victory yet, but hope. Actual hope.